Voice of the Cage. We have reached the main event of the evening.
This is Voice of the Cage Radio with Patrick Stanger. Fighters, trainers, promoters, events, rumors. If it has to do with MMA, we're talking about it.
Hey, this is Jake Shields, and you're listening to Voice of the Cage with Patrick Stanger.
This is Carlos Condit, and you're listening to Voice of the Cage with Patrick Stanger.
You don't know, you should know. This is Chael Sonnen, and you're listening to Voice of the Cage with the one and only Patrick Stanger.
Hey, this is Mike Goldberg, voice of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and you are listening to Voice of the Cage with my good friend Patrick Stanger. Here we go.
On the phone, I have Joe Rogan calling to talk to us about UFC 153. How you doing, Joe?
What's happening?
Not much, man. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome. I leave in a couple hours to head to Brazil to watch the fights. I can't wait.
Awesome, man. Hey, by the way, congratulations on both of your black belts.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, you got them I think just a few months back to back. You got one under Bravo, no gi, and then you also have one under Machado. Jean-Jacques Machado.
Yeah, I've been training with Jean-Jacques since 1998 and with Eddie Bravo since 2000.
Wow, man. And how often are you having to train in a gi as opposed to no gi? Are you going to gi class like once a week and then no gi?
Well, yeah, something like that. But, what's important is just Jiu-Jitsu. You just got to do a lot of Jiu-Jitsu. Gi and no gi are so similar in a way, especially the way I do it. I mean, obviously I wear the gi, but I don't use it for like chokes or anything like that. I use essentially all no gi moves, like overhooks, underhooks, basically the same techniques that I use in no gi, I use in gi. So what I concentrate on is just attacking the body. I don't try to just use the clothes to hold someone or anything like that. I know how to do it, but I feel like for my jiu-jitsu, it's best to allow people to do it to me, so it's good defensively. That's where I think the gi shines the best. But you always are holding with overhooks and underhooks and trying to control someone and thinking of them as being as slippery as possible, as opposed to what a lot of people do is they get really comfortable with the gi and all the different holds that you can apply, collars and sleeves and all the different ways you can hold on. And then when you go no gi, you're kind of lost. So for me to do both of them on a regular basis, what I do is I just sort of only use the gi very rarely to attack, and mostly I just attack with the same techniques that I would no gi.
That's awesome, man. I couldn't agree with you more. I think they both help your game. Of course, if you want to continue to belt up, you got to train in the gi. Of course, unless you train under Eddie. And Eddie does belt you guys without the gi, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the gi is very good for defense. It's very good to remain technical, because when you do no gi, you can sort of power out of things, and you can, because it's all slippery, you can explode out of stuff that you can't with the gi. The gi keeps you trapped, so you have to be very technical and aware, and you have to get out of things with the proper way, the proper manner.
Well, let's talk about it. UFC 153, you're obviously heading down there to Brazil right now. Silva versus Bonner, really cool of both of these guys to step up at the last minute and take this fight for the fans.
Yeah, I'm excited about this fight, man. I'm excited about this fight for a couple reasons. First of all, because I would want to see Anderson Silva fight anybody. If Anderson Silva fought my mom, as long as my mom promised she would fight back, I would watch.
Right?
I want to see him fight anybody. He's the greatest fighter of all time. I mean, he's literally the best mixed martial arts practitioner that's ever walked the face of the earth. No one's better as far as timing, experience, the rate of success against high-level opposition, the way he wins. I think Anderson Silva truly is a special athlete, and watching him compete is always a pleasure. What's exciting to me about this fight is, first of all, Stephan Bonner is nuts. I mean, he legitimately is a wild, crazy dude that will go full out and either win this fight in spectacular fashion or go out on his shield. And, he's not the type of guy that's ever been in a boring fight. He's never been stopped. He's incredibly durable. Never been knocked out. Never been submitted. The only time he's ever lost a fight that they stopped the fight was a cut against Krzysztof Szynski, and he was pleading with the referee to let him continue while blood was pouring down his face.
Was that UFC 116?
I don't know. I think that was when he came back and stopped him.
Okay.
That was in the rematch where he came back and knocked him out. I don't remember what UFC it was where he got stopped by cuts. But Stephan Bonnar he's an animal. He's a wild, crazy dude, and he's significantly larger than Anderson. Stephan walks around somewhere around 230 before he makes his cut.
Wow.
If you see him between fights, you would swear the guy's a heavyweight.
Wow.
I mean, he is huge. So he drops a ton of weight, and he's just going to be a physically bigger, larger, stronger guy. The gap between light heavyweight and middleweight is the biggest gap in the UFC. It's a 20-pound gap. You know, that's huge. That's an enormous amount. I mean, if you just stop and picture 20 12-ounce steaks or 20 16-ounce steaks, that's a lot of meat, man. It's a really
right.
There's a big difference in horsepower that Stephan Bonnar will bring into the octagon. And he's also a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with a really underrated ground game. As a matter of fact, they do have one common opponent besides Forrest Griffin, and the other common opponent is James Irvin. And Stephan Bonnar dismantled James Irvin with a Kimura. And, of course, Anderson famously stopped him in his first light heavyweight fight ever.
Hey, listen, this is going to be a great fight. There's no doubt in my mind. I know both of these guys are going to bring it. And I'm looking forward to checking it out, man. It's a pretty good card, man. You got, Nogueira on there, Dave Pee Wee Herman. I like that guy, man. He's nuts, but I like to watch him fight.
Yeah, he's a tough guy, and that's an interesting fight, too, because, of course, Nogueira hasn't fought since Frank Mir broke his arm. He had a fight scheduled. He had to pull out of it because of his injury that hasn't quite healed up yet. So that makes it interesting alone. And then, of course, also on the card, you've got two of the most exciting prospects to come out of Brazil. You have Eric Silva, who's taken on John Fitch, who, if you've never seen this kid fight before, he is a destroyer. Eric Silva is a wild dude. And he is a really young guy, too. I think he's only 24 or 25, gets better every time we see him. He's one of those kids, there's that level of, like, in the early 20s where you see them and then you see them 6 months later, and there's a giant leap of improvement. And that's Eric Silva. Really high on that kid. I really, really like that kid. And he's fighting a guy who's about as gritty a veteran as you get in John Fitch. And so it's going to be interesting to see whether Silva can avoid the takedown. And if he can't avoid the takedown, man, John Fitch is a bad guy to have on top of you. If he can't avoid the takedown and John Fitch gets on top of him, we're going to get to see what Eric Silva can do. And Fitch has vowed to submit him. He said he's going to try to finish this kid. Fitch has sort of come to a point of realization in his career that it's not just about winning, it's about being exciting. It's about getting fans excited about watching you compete. And so he's sort of changed his game a bit for this, he said, and he's just going to go after this guy and try to finish him and take some chances. And Eric Silva is going to want to keep this fight standing and blast John Fitch out of there. And if they do go to the ground, Eric Silva is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so his ground game is legit as well. He's a really exciting prospect, one of the best prospects in the welterweight division. Right, in my opinion, he's right up there with Rory McDonald.
Wow. Hey, man, that sounds like a great fight. Joe, do you have like a note sheet in front of you? How do you know all this information?
It's just all off my head. I'm a
That's
huge
crazy.
MMA fan. I mean, if you ask me anything about football, I don't know anything about football. All I know about football is when players get arrested. That's how I know their names.
Yeah, but
I don't know anything about baseball. I don't know anything about soccer, but I watch MMA pretty much every day. I read websites every day. It's just a passion of mine. It's a legit passion. It's my job, but I would do the exact same thing if I didn't have a job.
That's awesome. That you could just memorize the stats. You just know how many wins. I mean, you could just spit them off the top of your head. I mean, that makes for a great commentator.
Well, I'm very fortunate with this job because if I didn't have the gig, I literally would be doing the same things, and then my being a super fan would just sort of be a distraction for whatever job that I did have. But because I'm really lucky, it is my job, so it all works out in the long run.
Of course, you get to travel around to do your stand-up routines the same night. By the way, you're going to be in Austin, Texas, December 12th at the Moody Theater at ACL Live.
Yes, I am. I love Austin. It's one of my favorite places in the world, and I can't wait to get down there. Yeah, Saturday, December 1st in Austin, Texas at the Moody Theater. And I usually do Cap City when I'm there, but we decided to do a theater this time.
Yeah, man, it's a real nice theater, man. I think you'll like it a lot. So
Austin rules, dude. Really, it's so beautiful. If my wife wasn't from Texas, she hates Texas. She doesn't want to go. She was from Houston. She doesn't get it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The difference between Austin and Houston. I would move back. I would move to Texas. I really would.
Well, listen, man.
You guys got to do something about your weed situation.
Why? What's wrong with it?
Because it's illegal there.
Oh, yeah, the whole legal thing. Well, I hear that it's the best in Texas,
That's nonsense.
All the hydro stuff.
That's nonsense. Listen, it's not even close to the best. It's the best in California, in the world, without a doubt, because of the medical marijuana community, because of the fact that they can show you and tell you exactly what's in each different strain, and you can't get better than the botanists that exist in California today, because it's profitable for them to be that way. But you guys, I mean, look, Texas is supposed to be all about personal freedom. It's supposed to be all about being a man and doing whatever the hell you want and not letting anybody hold you down. And this silly situation we have with these pharmaceutical companies that have hijacked our legal system and made marijuana the Schedule I drug and kept it in that position. It's really gross. It's disgusting. And it's disgusting that it's still going on in 2012, that in our lifetimes this hasn't changed. It's changed a little bit in California because of the medical pot, but it's really, I find it just disgusting.
There's a lot of things that are really silly, that we still abide by in today's society. And, one of the things I like about you, Joe, especially, there's a lot of videos about some of your philosophies online. And, man, these things really make sense about life, about drugs or whatever it is. Whether you choose to do these drugs or not, you should have the right to be able to do these drugs in this country. It's a free country.
Well, the real problem is the word drugs automatically triggers an image in people's minds of losers. And the word drugs also covers a gigantic group of different psychoactive chemicals that have wildly different results on the human body. Drugs could be Vicodin or Percocets, or it could be psilocybin mushrooms, things that provide enlightenment. It could be Oxycontins, or it could be marijuana. There's drugs that are beneficial for the human psyche. They're beneficial for your consciousness. And then there's also drugs that are horribly addictive and terrible for your body. So we live in a weird society, man. We are at the peak right now of the information age, where you have instant access on your phone to virtually any question that you've ever want answered, and yet we still have these arcane and ridiculous laws in place. And I think that's slowly going to change as this generation that's in power right now gives way to the next generation, which will be a generation that grows up entirely under the guise of the Internet. So I think that it's going to change the world in that respect. But right now we're still operating under this stupid old way.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. The whole thing is we got really close to getting Ron Paul in office, at least getting him a shot. Do you think it can happen eventually?
I think someone like Ron Paul can get in place eventually, but we're going to have to take away the influence that gigantic corporations and banks have over our political system.
Right.
Because our political system right now does not represent the will of the people. It just doesn't. It represents the will of corporations. It represents the will of a certain amount of people that have an incredible amount of money. So it's not really the will of the people. And until that changes, you're never going to get a Ron Paul in office. You're never going to get a Rand Paul in office. You're never going to get someone who really wants change. You get people who talk about change, but they only talk about it just enough to get into office, and then it's business as usual for the corporations.
Hey, Joe, you obviously have you have a lot to say. I've got to cut this short because I promised Ryan I would not go over my 10 minutes. But I would like to invite you to come up when you're in town. You're welcome to do the show. I'm sure you're going to do Dell and Bob. I'm sure you're going to do Alex Jones. If you have time, you want to come up and do the show, I'd love to have you come up in the studio.
That sounds good, man. I really appreciate it, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. UFC 153 happening on pay-per-view this Saturday night. Make sure you check it out. Joe Rogan, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks for listening to Voice of the Cage Radio. Email questions, inquiries, and other business to info@voiceofthecage.com. Facebook search Voice of the Cage and like to get the latest Voice of the Cage radio show. visit voiceofthecage.com.